Hobie Brown, one of the standouts of the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse character, is currently being developed into a spin-off movie by Daniel Kaluuya. And also in Japan, Demon Slayer is at number one, beating Fantastic Four and Superman to that spot among the top 10 roster of films. And last but not the least, Mo Abudu of EbonyLife is still preaching the good news of her streaming service that she has launched to fill in the gap that has been created by the streaming services that have left Africa. So we'll be talking about all these stories and more right here on the Film Mandate. My name is Papa Otu. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Film Mandate, where I bring to you movie news, reviews, and reactions, both from the African front and the international scene. And thank you for joining me for this episode of the Film Mandate. I'd like to take this opportunity to apologize. I was trying to fix some technical difficulties with my live stream, and I was supposed to have started around 11:45, but unfortunately I couldn't. But I'm happy that I've been able to sort out the issue so that next time it wouldn't repeat itself. So pardon me for that. But I'll be delving into the very first story. And for those who have been following for a while, particularly if you happen to be a major fan of the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Man series or the Spider-Verse series, Daniel Kaluuya was one of the voice actors, and he showed up in the second installment that was screened in 2023 after the 2018 hit of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And now, with a standout character that stood out so obviously among the roster of Spider-Man superpowered heroes, was Hobie. Hobie, and that is one of the character that Daniel Kaluuya voiced. So news has it that, especially published in the Deadline article, we have Spider-Punk animated feature from Daniel Kaluuya and Arjun Singh in development at Sony. And this is written by Matt Grober. So I read. So Sony Pictures Animation is in early development on a Spider-Punk animated feature film from co-writers Daniel Kaluuya, Judas and the Black Messiah fame, and Arjun Singh Primetime. Deadline has learned. Plot details are under wraps and there are no other deals in place at this time. The natural assumption, of course, is that Kaluuya will reprise the role of Spider-Punk, which he played in 2023 Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and will reprise in the upcoming Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse. Created by writer Dan Slott and artist Olivier Coipel, Spider-Punk, aka Hobie Brown, is a version of Spider-Man who leans into a more anarchistic, anti-establishment attitude than Peter Parker's version. Residing on Earth 138, the character is fueled by his desire to help take down corrupt systems. He first appeared during a Spider-Verse crossover event as part of 2015's The Spider-Man number 10. Across the Spider-Verse is the second film in a trilogy of lauded animated features from Sony Pictures Animation, which chronicle Spider-Man's adventures in the multiverse. The first film, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, was a hit both critically and commercially, grossing over $394 million worldwide and winning the Oscar for Best Animated Feature. Across the Spider-Verse was also Oscar nominated and even more successful at the box office, grossing over $690 million worldwide. Beyond the Spider-Verse is dated for release on June 2027. Yeah, 2027. So That's the exciting news we have with regards to the Spider Verse trilogy of movies. And this happens to be the spin-off, not the main Spider-Verse films. And as we've heard over, I mean, if you've been observing over the period of time, 2024, that was last year, was supposed to have been the time when the third installment of the Spider-Verse movies was supposed to have been released. But pending to certain challenges, coupled with the strike, the actors' strike, which happened particularly in 2023, derailed it from happening. And as we've already seen, fans are eagerly waiting for the third installation to see what happens, particularly having the Miles Morales end up in another version of his Earth and meeting his very own evil self who is out for blood. So it is the suspense they left in the previous film was really exciting. And for most of us, we've been anticipating as to when the third installation will be released. However, earlier on in this year, I think somewhere in April, thereabouts, they confirmed a release date, which is in June 2027. So at least with regards to that aspect, it has been settled. We are now rest assured that in 2 years' time, which seems far off compared to the way they teased us in wanting to see it the following year after the 2023 successful, launch of that movie. I guess we have no choice than to be patient and wait for the movie in 2027. However, there's been a lot of development with regards to the Spider Verse universe in itself, seeing the fact that Spider Man 1, which stars Nicolas Cage, who also voiced the character for Spider Man Noir in the Spider Verse, has shot a series, and that is being wrapped. Currently, there isn't any plans for season two due to um, a little misunderstanding between the creators, that is Phil Lord and Chris Miller, with the studios with regards to the budget. So that has been sorted out, but it is even yet to be released. So hopefully, when it's released and is that good, it would perhaps convince the studios, that is Sony Pictures or Sony Animation, to want to do a sequel, or sorry, a season two to that property, that is the Spider-Man Noir. However, with regards to spin-offs, one of the things that we all can agree, we all can, I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, agree is that one of the standouts of the Spider-Man movies was Hobie. And it's quite interesting because, I mean, the Spider-Verse universe itself is so rich with characters. Almost every single character in there is is so enticing and intriguing that you would want to know more about their background. And looking at the star power and influence of Daniel Kaluuya, I think it will be interesting to see a version of Spider-Man that we are not often used to, especially when we saw his character, display some kind of suave and charisma that is really very different from all the Spider-Man versions we have seen. We were enthralled by the Miles Morales Spider-Man, granted, and all of us were excited to see what he could do, and he is marvelous at that. And being voiced by Shemek Moore, so it is interesting to have had him, realize the character so well. Now it looks like with the hobby character being developed now by Daniel Kaluuya and AJ Sage, it will be very interesting to see their spin on what the background of this character is all about. What we saw wasn't really much about him, but all we know is that he was part of the Spider-Man, secret society or Spider-Verse, who lives in a different dimension altogether. So it will be quite interesting to see how it pans out when finally it is realized. And hopefully, maybe in the distant future, a real live action version of these characters. There are kind of, I wouldn't say rumors necessarily, because even Kevin Feige had spoke about it when he had the conclave with the group of journalists to talk about the future with regards to the MCU universe. And he did mention that he's been asked to stay off Miles Morales to still such a time when they are done with the Spider-Verse universe. And it's likely that if that is going to happen, then we are looking at somewhere 2027, meaning that with regards to what the brand new day, we are not going to see him in that. But the good news is that at least the Spider-Verse films were so good and were so enticing that everybody is anticipating to see these characters being used over and over again. So it was of no wonder that we had that of a Spider-Man one being done with Nicolas Cage, and now we have Kaluuya. I'm hoping that perhaps they'll do same with Gwen Stacy and maybe do same as well with the Indian Spider-Man character. They are also intriguing. Maybe they can create a whole universe, a Spider-Man universe on its own that will incorporate these different nationalities from different continents all together. Because we had two people from Asia. That is the girl in the robotic mechanism that helps her, travel interdimensionally and all that. And also we have that of the Indian who's also from Asia, and then Hobie from the UK. So it will be quite interesting to see how these things are realized eventually. Perhaps they all having their own spin-off stories to flesh them out even the more, as we have seen with that of Miles Morales. But well, I cannot speak with authority as to whether that will be done or not. Currently, all we could hope for is to have the Hobie character being developed by Daniel Kaluuya realized, so that we can have much more diversity with regards to the different stories they can tell with the Spider-Verse universe. So personally, I'm excited. I don't know about you. What's your thoughts about this story as to Daniel Kaluuya developing this character for a spin-off? Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments section below. So moving from the Spider-Verse universe, now we moved right back to Asia. And Asia, a number of films, have been making rounds all over the globe, and particularly you have a number of the MCU films from Fantastic Four, and then you also have a DC film making, big waves all over the world. However, in the Japanese box office market, despite the fact that Superman and Fantastic Four is a force to reckon with in their early openings, it looks like Japanese are holding the number one spot strong for their own property, and that is the Demon Slayer. And this is published in the article in the website, on the website called Crunchyroll, and it reads that Japan box office Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba Infinity Castle first movie stays at number one for 3 consecutive weeks, and that is really exciting. So the Infinity Castle movie has made 17.6 billion yen to date, and is written by Mikikazu Komachu. Let me read this article. It says that Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba Infinity Castle earned 2.457 billion yen, and that is a 16.75 million US dollars on 1,739,600 admissions in its third week of August 1st to 3rd, according to Kojio Chushinsha. I hope I got the pronunciation right. The third weekend gross was down 21% from the second weekend, but was still enough to keep the film in first place in the Japan box office ranking for 3 consecutive weekends. The Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba's official X announced on August 4th that the film's cumulative total gross had reached 17,639,557,600 yen, which is $120 million on 12,558,582 admissions in 17 days since its release in Japan on July 18th, which was 112% of the 3-week gross of the franchise's previous film in 2020. So Demon Slayer, the movie Mugen Train, as previously reported, Infinity Castle already broke the record for the fastest Japanese film to reach the 10 billion mark. So Demon Slayer Kimechi no Yaiba Infinity Castle now stands at 10th place in the all-time box office ranking in Japan, and has also become the 7th top grossing Japanese animated film to date, surpassing the first Slam Dunk with 16.48 billion yen, that is 112.2 million USD in 2022. As a result, Japanese live action films have disappeared from the all-time top 10, and 7 of which are now Japanese anime movies. So that is quite interesting. So this is the all-time, sorry, I don't know, I think the settings on my streaming is not really working well. Okay, so let me just hold it up. So taking a look at the top 10 all-time Japanese grossing films, box office films in Japan, we still have Titanic in the mix there. And that is from way back in 1997. That is how far that is. Coupled with the Princess Mononoke, which also happened to have been released around the same time or in the same year. We have Frozen and all others mixed up in the mix. However, it looks like the Demon Slayer of 2020 tops this cycle. Now, if you move down further to what happens to be the current weekend box office in the Japanese market, we have at number 1, from its first week till the 3rd week, it has stayed at number 1. And at number 2, you have other films following in that regard. However, we have Ilio releasing freshly into the Japanese market, and that is its weekend since release. It's now at number 4, but it was at number 1 upon its release, but however have been taken over by Demon Slayer. So you have a number of films for like the Fantastic Four First Step, F1 the movie, and Lilo and Stitch not being able to hold that spot. Arguably, it is understandable that F1 the movie and Lilo and Stitch have been in the cinemas for long, so it's of no surprise that they may not be at number 1 now, because definitely it's fizzled out with regards to those who perhaps wanted to watch it have already done so. So looking at the current cycle now, it looks like Demon Slayer Kimetsu may hold the ground or the number 1 spot for a while before finally maybe another film takes over. I wanted to talk about this because I feel like over the years, a number of films, particularly from Hollywood, was dominating the box offices, worldwide. But it looks like the trend is changing, and a number of film industries or from their respective nations seems to appreciate their movies much more than perhaps previously it used to be. And I don't know whether this can be attributed to the fact that DC, the biggest property in Hollywood, let's say the Marvel and DC and other tentpole properties, didn't perform to expectations, and perhaps with this particular trend, a number of people have rather chosen to resort to their own films, or whether the standard of the films being told in these countries are at par or perhaps even superior to that of the US. That I cannot answer, but it seems very interesting nowadays, looking at the fact that a number of films, particularly from the US, is not able to dominate the way it used to be. And I don't know whether that would change when finally we have Avengers Doomsday come around, and perhaps some other properties, coming from the States. But regardless, it also speaks to the fact that now, more than ever, the world over, people are appreciating the medium of film, regardless of wherever it's coming from. And I speak on that regard because maybe for certain countries, such, event films always comes from, Hollywood, and it's still some of the films that majority of us who are outside Hollywood always look up to, particularly if they are of source materials that we so much appreciate, like the comic books or stories that we may have known in the past. So it is something that we all appreciate, but it looks like with time, a number of countries from India, China, Japan, Korea, all are coming up with certain properties that are making much impact than perhaps previously it was. And you even have K-pop on Netflix. Is it a yeah, the Demon Slayers, or I mean, pardon me, I actually don't remember the entire title. But for a number of weeks in Korea, it was number one. And now on Netflix, it happens to be one of the most watched properties on the streaming service. So it is quite interesting how things are turning up nowadays. And I think in all, it's good for the industry across board, because what it means is that if good movies are being made and people would go to the cinema and watch it, or subscribe to a streaming service and watch it, it bodes well for all other films, regardless of where it's coming from. And I'm excited that for one reason or the other, in Japan, their very film Demon Slayer is being celebrated by them, and I'll be waiting to see how it also performs worldwide, whether the same anticipation and fervor that people go to the cinemas to watch it with would be received similarly in other countries as well. So that is what I'm really anticipating. I don't know about you. So let me know what you think, whether the Demon Slayer, which has been number one, for 3 consecutive weeks in Japan, will receive the same attention when it crosses its border to foreign territories. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. And finally, my last story, but not the least of all, is a story that I've already reported on before, but it was captured again in the Variety on the Variety website, and I thought I should talk about it again. And that is EbonyLife CEO Mo Abudu to launch her new streaming service for Pan-African series, movies, talk shows, and lifestyle content. And I think it's one of the things that we as Africans are happy about, because from the previous years, as we have always watched with anticipation to see certain streaming services or certain platforms be available to us to have our movies shown on it. And just as I've said in my previous episodes, it is of no fault of the streaming giants to leave Africa in particular, or cut down on the number of productions they are doing, all due to perhaps the revenue margin that they were expecting that is not being met. So it is understandable. But regardless, we still want to watch these content. And I'm happy that even though there's been a gap created, Mo Abudu has stepped in to bridge that gap. And therefore, let's take a look at this article briefly, and something that she said that really caught my attention. So this is written by Elsa Keslasi. I hope I got the name right. EbonyLife Media CEO Mo Abudu isn't done pushing international boundaries for African storytellers and creators. One of Africa's preeminent media moguls, the resourceful London-born Abudu, is getting ready to expand the scope of her Lagos-based company with EbonyLife on Plus, a new kind of membership-based streaming service that will feature Pan-African series, movies, talk shows, and lifestyle event content. EbonyLife was initially created as an upscale TV network in 2012 and successfully moved into feature film and series production, scoring deals with Sony Pictures Television and Netflix, among others. The launch of EbonyLife on Plus comes at a critical time for the African filmmaking and creative community, which has been in limbo since global streamers shifted course in the last 18 months after short-lived commitment in the region. Netflix reportedly pulled the plug on its Nigerian originals, while Amazon Prime Video abruptly exited the African market altogether last year. There's a whole continent that needs to have a voice. Their stories need to be told, and they are producing but no longer have a home for their productions. She says, noting that a lot of people are turning to YouTube as an option, which she says shouldn't be the only place. In an interview with Variety outlining plans for EbonyLife on Plus, Abudu says the streamer's rollout will be a natural evolution of a work and mantra. I've been in this industry for the past 20 years, and my primary focus now is on building a thriving ecosystem, one that encompasses production, distribution, capacity building both across the continent and in the diaspora, she says. EbonyLife has achieved a top-notch track record in scripted, notably with the thriller miniseries Blood Sisters, a Netflix original that's garnered over 11 million hours viewed in its first week alone. Oloture, a dark-edged thriller movie and series about human trafficking, and A Sunday Affair, a romantic dramedy film. The banner also entered the festival circuit with Death and the King's Horseman, a film adaptation of Wole Soyinka's acclaimed anti-colonial stage play by the same name, which played at Toronto in 2022. So this is where I wanted to draw our attention to the last two paragraphs. Abudu hasn't conceived EbonyLife on Plus as another global streamer, she says, but rather a platform that will be bringing together a community around shared interests rooted in purpose, identity, and connection. Do I have the budgets of Netflix and Amazon? Of course, I don't. And that's why we are being a little bit creative on the types of content that we are bringing to the platform, says Abudu, who ventured into directing with the short films Her Perfect Life and Iyawo Ni in 2023. She says she isn't looking to compete with the Netflixes or become like a small-scale Amazon or YouTube platform. So let me leave it out here at that. Yeah, and I think her approach to this very situation is very admirable in the sense that it is really necessary to understand your strengths and your weaknesses. And over the past couple of months and weeks, there's been a lot of local or a number of local filmmakers or stakeholders in the space who are also bringing their own form of streaming service. And you have that of Cover and a couple of, I think I can count about 5 who are entering into that space. And one of the questions I kept asking myself is whether they would have the necessary budgets to create original content. Because most often than not, for a lot of streaming services, maybe the smart way to go about it without incurring much cost is to just have these films being put on the platform. But if you also want to control the narrative as to the kind of production value you want to lend, not just to the content, but the brand that you have as a streamer, you need to produce your own content or your own audiovisual, productions. And we've seen over the years that Netflixes have been producing their own now. Yes, they accept that of others as well, but within certain parameters of certain technical specifications. So obviously, it looks like same will be done with EbonyLife on Plus, which I think is a smart move. But I like the fact that she acknowledges the very realities that she can't compete with the Netflixes and the Amazons because they have deeper pockets and parent companies or, certain funding agencies that can literally produce certain films perhaps on end. However, she can do so, and therefore she's finding the creative ways. And that is what I've been yearning to hear from streamers whose intention is to stream in Africa, particularly of African descent who are based here or from the diaspora. And that is where my concern is, because My my concern is that where the giant media, the streamer giants failed, they would learn what didn't work well for them and find ways and means to adapt and make sure they succeed. Perhaps when they succeed, the streaming giants may return with the same business model to make sure that they are able to also have a stake in the African market. But regardless, I'm so happy that Mo Abudu, with vast experience in the diaspora in the UK, working with some US studios, have learned enough, and also with her origins being from Africa, is able to bring both worlds and create a hybrid that will not be entirely African, neither will it be from the West, but its own kind of product that serves both worlds. Because at the end of the day, we don't just want to conquer our market. We just don't want to take control of our market and make sure that we benefit from, I mean, with regards to a lot of subscriptions, which in turn will result in huge revenues. But we're also looking at occupying certain markets beyond the continent. But first, we start at home. And I'm happy that even though she is a London born Nigerian, she has returned to have this done on the continent to help, the creative community, because that is where we have a greater challenge. Majority of filmmakers on the continent, when they are done with their movies, yes, some are able to find the smartest ways and moves to be able to meet the standard expected of them from the streaming giants like Netflix and Amazon. But for those who perhaps for their inability to have the necessary funding to produce a film with that production value that will be expected of them by these streaming giants, most of their films are left to sit on the shelf somewhere. And in certain cases where they think it will not augur well for them by leaving it on a shelf, they upload it on YouTube. But bear in mind, there's nothing wrong with putting it on YouTube. There's nothing at all, because a number of filmmakers in Africa now are benefiting massively from the YouTube TV option that they have for people to pay for that subscription service itself. And I think it's gone a long way to sustain the ecosystem we have in Africa. And I'm excited about that. But just as Mo Abudu said, that shouldn't be the only platform. Sometimes competition creates the necessary space for the best of services and perhaps residuals to be, given to these creators. And hopefully, with her coming on board, when it becomes very successful, it will be a major competitor, not for just YouTube, but for the other streaming giants. And I'm glad that her vision is not to necessarily compete. Hers is to ensure that Africa has a space where they can put their platform and where it can be a community of shared interest. And that is what excites me so much. So I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on this particular matter. I, for one, am excited about Abudu's plan for Africa, making sure that the gap that is being created is occupied by something that would serve, the need of Africans, for Africans, and by Africans. And I'm excited about that. I don't know your thoughts on this. So share your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll be excited to hear from you. So all too soon, this brings me to the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you so much for joining me. Henceforth, I'll be doing live. So this one is a live stream that I'm doing, and from time to time I'll be doing it. So keep your eyes open for my scheduled live stream when you see it online. Enjoy me, and let's have conversation. Once you share your thoughts or questions, I will be available to also respond to you. But once again, thank you so much for watching me for this episode, and I'll come your way tomorrow again with another exciting episode of the Film Mandate. My name is Papa Otu, and I'll see you soon.